Okay, looks like Cathay is overwhelming. All right, so we'll start at the border here. So this is the border between Cathay and Koresh, and that is where we will begin our tour. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Grand Cathay. So here is Grand Cathay. You could see starting in the bottom, we have the one and only Nakai. Yes, wah, 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 wah. And there are watchtowers guarding against the jungles of the Naga. And here we have the Great Canal, which leads us through the Burning Wind Nomads. Also, fun fact, these rivers, you can sail them. You can absolutely sail up this river right here. You can sail up this with your boats all the way up through into this big lake. Then you can come around here and you could sail all of this through here all the way up until you arrive at Hanyu Port. Yeah, including Black Arcs. But anyway, let's resume our tour. So this is southern Cathay, which is mostly dominated by jungles. You'll notice there is the spirits of Shanlin, who are the really, really nasty forest spirits. They're the ones that are similar to Drycha here in the jungle of Xi'an, so they're the angry purple ones. You got Nakai the Wanderer here down against the Wormkins, which are a Norskan faction. Here's one of the sea lanes. Beyond the Norskins, who have managed to take a small amount of territory here, we've got the Eastern River Lords, who presumably serve under Yin Yin. And we go through this beautiful terrain. And up north of them, the terrain starts to get a little ugly as we arrive in Fushao, because we have the Dead Flag Fleet, the Vampire Coast. So you got vampire pirates who have their capital in, I think it's Beishai. Yeah, Beishai is their capital, where these Eastern Vampire Coast lords are. And then north of them is, of course, Lokir Fellheart and his dreaded Black Arc, the Blessed Dread, where he is set up in Hai Shai. And then, of course, you may... So, fun fact, this is the Dragon River, right? Which connects into Weijin. So, Weijin, this river is, of course, receiving a lot of power from the Celestial Dragon Emperor, so no one can sail it. Even though this may look sailable, you actually cannot enter this river. And also, there are hard cliffs here along the Chaos Waste, so the only way to get from the Chaos Waste into Cathay is you have to go through the Great Bastion. So for instance, Village cannot jump into the water and go from here. No, I cannot play the DLC content. We're gonna see us slapping some of them around more than likely. But I cannot play it. But you could see it fine. Why is it unsaleable? Because the Celestial Dragon Emperor is basically pouring a bunch of magical power into it. And it will it'll kill you. Also, you know, there's like lots of cannons and stuff, and you know, they've got their defenses there. But let's head into central Cathay. So up here we can head into the Kunlan Mountains, where you've got the big bad place, Kunlan, which is ruled over by the Dimmed Sun's Greenskins. So the Dimmed Sun's Greenskins control this beautiful mountain range. And also, fun fact, Savage Orcs are now a type of faction, essentially. So you'll notice that Kunlan, despite being the capital, because it's controlled by Savage Orcs, they are not able to make a large city. They're like ogres. They can only make minor settlements. That does not affect Wurzag. Wurzag is normal, but regular Savage Orcs are not able to make big boy camps. As we head over a bit, you've got Xingpo, which has its super famous Astromancy Tower, which is floating in the air, because, you know, Cathay's got to show off. And Shingpo is, of course, where Deathmaster Snitch has recently taken over. Meanwhile, down here, we can encounter the Jiangxi rebels, who are vampire counts, and the vampire counts have taken up residence in the Nongcheng Basin, where they are being an absolute pain in the ass to Grand Cathay. On the other side of the Great Canal, you of course have the Celestial Riverlands. So the Celestial Riverlands here are focused mostly around Shillong, but this entire area is sailable. I believe up until, yeah, you could sail all the way up to around here-ish, to where Deathmaster Snitch is. So all this entire lake, all these larger rivers, which you'll note here on the map, if the rivers are this dark gray color, that means you can sail them. So Black Arcs, navies, all of your ocean faring goodies can traverse any of the gray rivers. So Black Arcs can head all the way into Central Cathay, which is very, very important if you're going to be playing with Lokir Felhart. But of course, as we head, if we head back to the south, if we get on the western side, we have the village of the Tigermen, which guards against the border with End. And these are the Mountains of Heaven, which are the super gigantic mountain range. And as we head up through the desert, we run into where the Riverlands meets the Warpstone Desert, where Zhao Ming is defending against the ogres, and of course, the Great Ma. So here we, you can see there's actually been a bit of restructuring. So Zhao Ming is actually much further south than he was originally. Instead of being way up near Shenyang, he's now down here on the other side of the Great Ma, in the mountains near Hanyu Port. And you work your way through Shenwu, up through the Warpstone Desert, being mindful, of course, of Deathmaster Snitch. And here you have the city of Shenyang, the Shrine of the Alchemist, the Tower of Asher, which is not a settlement right now, funny enough. And as you continue north, you eventually cross over the lands of stone and steel until you reach Nangao, which is beautiful on this map. So Nangao has this big defensible bastion, and then of course you have the Great Wall, which still has all three gates. And then we head into the Northern Chaos Wastes. So the Northern Chaos Wastes are a surprisingly golden place that, and as you can see, the realm of chaos lies beyond, potentially somewhere we might expand into in the future, perhaps. As we head across this extremely long amount of territory, we start reaching ogres and such until you arrive at the Challenge Stone, where of course you have Kolek Suneater declaring his war against the ogres. If we continue to head up past the floating mountain, we head into the plains of Zanbaijin, which you may recognize from the upcoming DLC as the main focus. And of course you have the Gallows Tree, and this area is controlled by Nurgle, Kadatha, the plains of Kadatha. And then up here you have the Blood Marshes, where none other than Archaon the Everchosen have taken over. Beyond that, and it's Slaanesh controls the Blood Marshes. And then you've got the area of Bloodfire Falls, where you have the Howling Citadel from the prologue campaign. You also have all the plains and stuff. And here is Boris Ursus waging his one-man war against the Dark Powers. Beyond the Howling Citadel, we reach the Plain of Illusions, which the Plains of Illusion has ports and the crystal spires here in the back. You've got the Volcano's Heart here. And then down here, you reach another Nurgle area, the Noisome Tumor. The Noisome Tumor is where a particularly infamous individual is fighting against the forces of chaos. Meanwhile, even further over, we've got more, I believe this is, yeah, the Broken Wheel are Tzeentchian forces fighting against Malice Darkblade. as we start transitioning kind of away from the more chaotic aspects of the realms of the Chaos Wastes into more frosty environments. So here you've of course got a Tzeentchian faction. And then past that, you reach the Cold Mires, which are controlled by Sin Dancer and the servants of Slaanesh. And these cross all the way down here to the Palace of Princes. North of that, you have the Northern Wastes, which is controlled by Khorne at Blood Mountain. You've got Infernius north of that. And then the Silver Tower of Sorcerers, where Kairos Fateweaver shows up in his little cinematic movie. And then we head into the Shardlands, which the Shardlands, of course, are those lands that cover the entrance to Nagaroth. And then over here is the the Palace of Ruin, the Glacial Gardens, which no man owns. Then you have Volkia the Bloody getting involved over here in the Ironfrost Glacier, which of course leads down into the Iron Coast, where there's a particular Dawi who's taken up residence. Beyond Dracula Spire, we enter into the Red Desert, where there are rebel greenskins that have broken free of the Dark Elf slave camps. And Katep, of course, has taken up residence, but you'll notice this desert is much larger than it used to be back in the day. It's a very solid amount of distance. So yes, Clark Spires, where Katep begins his quest. Next, of course, to the Witchwood. And we'll swing back up here in a second. But then you've got the Ashen Coast as you follow the Plain of Dogs down into Scarpel's Lair. You've got Beastmen running around in Skaven. Here's another one of the sea lanes, but this is the Underworld sea lane. So you'll notice that you can, if you're playing as Malekith, for instance, Malekith could head into the ocean, make his way over to the sea lane, and once you enter it, you travel through it, and it brings you out over here. A lot of settlements have moved, yes. Here you can see that Morathi has already been deeply corrupting this land with all of the deals she's made with Slaanesh. The ancient city of Quintex is a very defensible position. It is quite a slog to get through all the mountains.
I can't stay because of guests coming soon, but I hope you all have a lovely stream.
Thank you, Eldrin. I appreciate that. Here we've got the Dark Elves, for some reason, have taken over Arnheim, and they're holding it against Norskan forces and Beastmen. As we travel up again through Ulthawan and follow along the coast, you've got the Doomglades, controlled by the Dracula Coven, which heads into the Obsidian Peaks, where Tarux is beginning his rampages around Storic Core. You'll note that there is an Ogre faction who have arrived in the mountains of Nagaroth. The Flame Gullet tribe, of course, have a camp over here in the mountains amidst Beastmen, Skaven, Dark Elves, and all sorts of other nasty creatures. We head around here. You've got Blacklight Tower, many more Dark Elves, and of course there is a Lithanar who begins his journey in Karankara, which is super dumb, but I've already heard confirmation that they're going to be moving him somewhere else in the very, very near future. So that's really cool news. Over here, you'll note some other new factions that have picked up. You got the Cage Breakers, led by Sporticus. So Sporticus the Orc is leading the Eastern Greenskins that have broken free from Crone Hellebron, and who she's going to start off fighting against. Nagaron being nice and big and spooky. But heading further afield, yeah, well, we've got the Island of Albion, where of course you have Be'lakor, the one and only Shadow Lord, waging a war against the Sightless, who are a very unfortunately named Tzeentch faction. And you'll notice that Be'lakor has his own Shadow Rift. So the Shadow Rift, of course, allows Be'lakor to create more Shadow Rifts across the world, And as he creates his own shadow rifts, Be'lakor is able to create portals that he could teleport between as he wishes. If we head back over here a little bit, we can travel the Frozen City until we reach the Fortress of the Damned over here, where you'll see Prince Sigvald the Magnificent between the Palace of Princes and the Fortress of the Damned, who's about to become a very bad time for the Dark Elves. And then we head into the frigid lands of Norska. The frigid lands of Norska now have Wulfric the Wanderer here in the interior behind these imposing boulders and rocks. And as you pass the monolith of Borkill the Bloody-Handed and head deeper into its environments, you've got a nice mix of volcanic and icy terrain amidst all this craziness, and there's a lot more lovely resources to be found in the lands of Norska, because Norskans can now exploit resources. Down here, the Kislevites have begun to expand into Norska, and they've captured the Tower of Crack and the Bay of Blades, but unfortunately for them, the Demon Prince Azazel awaits them. Meanwhile, you have Throg the Troll King at the Monolith of Flesh being a complete nuisance. And you may notice that as we head by the Altar of Spawns and the Winter Pyre, that the Winter Pyre is now controlled by the dwarfs, as the Norskan dwarves have begun to expand against the Norskans. But I want to show you one of my favorite new settlements, which is that near Krakadrak, you now have the Lair of the Troll King. So the Lair of the Troll King is now a its own standalone settlement, and if you're playing Throg, it is somewhere you'll want to go very quickly. Meanwhile, as we head further across Norska, you'll notice there's a new path that connects Norska to Kislev. So no longer do you have to go past the Frozen Landing and cross here by the Temple of Heimkol, but you could also cut across this new settlement of Yetich. But obviously, if you're at war with the owner, you're going to have to fight your way through them in order to get to Kislev. Meanwhile, you've got the capital of Hellpit, where Throt the Unclean is waging his war against the Kislevites. Kislev has been restructured so that it is, I believe, four provinces of minor settlements with its 3 big settlements. So you have Troll Country, which is made of Fort Straghov and Fort Otrisk right here. And then over here, you've got the Western Oblast made of Zoshink and Castle Alexandrov. Kostaltin controls the major port city of Erengrad, with this beautiful mountain fortress next to it. And then over here to the side, you have Prague, the cursed city. South of Prague is, of course, Kislev, the capital where the Ice Queen controls. And then up here, you have the Eastern Oblast, which consists of Yetich, Novchovzy, and Volksgrad, with the final little piece of Kislev being the Southern Oblast made of Fort Jakova, Zavastra, and Tevo.
Keep up the great work and hope you have had a good day.
I've had a great day. As we head into the World's Edge Mountains, you will find Karak Ungor has been sieged by ogres, the Rock Skull tribe. But nearby lurks Azhag the Slaughterer, leading from his new capital of Khazad Irkulaz. No doubt he'll be retaking the base of the Red-Eye Night Goblins, who would very much prefer getting their home back. You of course have Karak Raziak leading down into the mountains there. And as we head across here, you'll see the Silver Pinnacle controls a very dominating position near Khazad Irkulaz. Makes a potential ally for Azhag, but also a potential foe. As we head up, as we follow the Eastern Mountains, you'll notice that the World's Edge Mountains, the eastern edges, are dominated by the Vampire Counts. Control Howling Rack, the Desolation of Drakimor, and the Silver Pinnacle. Meanwhile, Khazad Irkulaz controls the northern World's Edge Mountains, and as you come down here through the pass, past the entrance to the Silver Pinnacle, you have Peak Pass, where Nashrak's lair has the Red-Eye Night Goblins, who are fighting against Ungrim Ironfists in Karak Kadrin. As we head further south across the mountains, you've got Fallen King Mountain connecting to Grom Peak, which is now a major settlement and somewhere important to the Greenskins. And past Grand Peak, of course, lies the lands of Zofbar,
Trinkets.
which are beautiful as always. Further east, you have Mount Gunbad, now controlled by the nefarious Skarsnik, which extends down to the World's Edge Archway, another one of the many entrances out into the Darklands, and the High Place, where it now begins the proud lands of the Dawi, where Karazakarak is ruled over by Thorgrim Grudgebearer, but he's got a bit of a green skin problem. As we head further south across the mountains, we enter Death Pass, which seems empty, with Karak Dhron, Iron Rock, and Black Crag mysteriously ruins. But I can tell you from personal experience, there are some fiery Skaven that have taken up residence. Meanwhile, the southern World's Edge Mountains, we of course have Karak Azul, the Black Iron Mine, and a new settlement, the Sump Pit, which you can tell has a bit of a problem with tar. Karak 8 Peaks, of course, ruled over by the goblins, is now just a 2-settlement province instead of a 4-settlement province. So I do think there's some more work to be done with Karak 8 Peaks in the future. There's now a new ogre faction that's right smack in the middle of the Badlands, the Feastmaster tribe. Over here, you've got the, we begin to run into some of the factions in the Badlands proper. Vrenka Hills, the proud port of Balakvar, and Balagdawasbag and Dakraz. You have Stone Mine Tower leading down to the fallen mines of Akron, Bitterstone Mine, and Dragonhorn Mines. Down here, of course, is Grunty Mingol, Galbaraz, and a new settlement known as Stormhinge. Also, if you play as Altharion the Grim, you have a duo start over here. You may notice there is a brand new vampire count faction that's taken over the ruins of Morkheim, and a new settlement being the Sunken Kernak, which is the mysterious Ghoul King. The mysterious Ghoul King lord who leads the Sires of Morkane. Past the ruins of the Marshes of Madness, you have Karak Azgal led over by Gorfang Rockgut, who I have already petitioned very, very heavily to be moved back to his ancestral home of Black Crag, but that's a work in progress. Crooked Fang Fort. So Karak Azgal connects to Cragtomen in the Misty Mountain, where Queek Headtaker now begins. So you can actually see Queek Headtaker is a good ways north compared to where he used to be. He's up here in the Misty Mountain instead of way the fuck down here in Granite Massif. So now he's up here in the Misty Mountain, very close to the desolation of Nagash. And then north of that, you have Crooked Fang Fort, which connects to Dringraz and Spite Peak, and then takes us back to Karak Azgal. But of course here, across the mountains, is the desolation of Nagash, which connects to Bitter Bay and Nagashazar. So the way the Broken Teeth province is now set up is there are 2 entrances. You have Bitter Bay guarding this side and giving you a port, and then you have the desolation of Nagash guarding this way. But now you can walk to Nagashazar from the west. You no longer have to go all the fucking way over to the east and walk your way over. And you can no longer get to Nagashazar through the ocean. Instead, you have to walk. And it's a long walk, unless, of course, you can use the underway stance. Right now, it appears to be ruins, though there does seem to be some mysterious amounts of Skaven corruption going on there. As we head north into the Darklands, we reach the fortress of Vorag, currently ruled over by Imric the Dragon Prince, on his quest to find a dragon waifu, at least according to rumors that I've heard. You've got the Bone Gulch over here, connected to the Ash Ridge Mountains. Across here, you'll notice these ogres have returned from Warhammer 3, the Thunder Guts, who control Ruins Inn and the legendary city of Pigbarter, important to a good friend of mine. Meanwhile, to the north, you have the Black Fortress, often associated with a faction, though I can't quite remember who they are. Maybe one day we'll see them. Owned by the Eye-Biter Ogre tribe, who also control the nefarious Sentinels and the Demon Stump, which is heavily contested over by the Orcs. The Darkland Orcs. Meanwhile, down here, we have the legendary Darkhold, which has a prize for dwarfs, vampire counts, and high elves, relating to, I believe, the corpses of the amidst beasts you could see in these mountains. And this, of course, connects to Mount Greyhag and the new haunt of Tretch Craventail being Crookback Mountain, which of course connects up here to Mount Silverspear, which Mount Silverspear is then over here connected to the dangerous and deadly Tower of Gorgoth, owned by someone, well, I'm sure we'll see in the future. Beyond the Tower of Gorgoth lies the Gates of Zar, which of course lead to the deep and terrifying pit you must enter to reach Nar Zagrand, which guards the entrance to the mountains of Mourn. Beyond that, you have the Falls of Doom, the Great Skull Lakes, and the ancient fallen hold of Uzkalak, which is a major settlement, controlled by a new greenskin faction known as the Slaves of Zar. Narzagrand? Sorry, Zarnagrand. Trying to move and talk at the same time. Up above Uzkalak, you reach the ruins of the Goromadni Mountains, where Karak Vlag stands empty with its immense amount of chaos corruption, and leads, of course, into the Temple of Heimkol and the Frozen Landing, before you arrive at the Skull Road, which is almost entirely ruins, though once again, a concerning amount of Skaven corruption can be found here. So you have Karak Doom, the ancient fallen legendary dwarf hold, the settlement of Tribe Slaughter, the Pillar of Skulls, and Stormvrak Mount, which of course leads back into the lands of Slanesh, where Archaon the Everchosen has begun his conquest. Beyond these torn apart lands, we head into the mountains of Mourn proper, where once you pass the challenge stone that separates the Chaos Waste from the mountains of Mourn, you reach Blizzard Peak, Ice Spewer, and of course the new haunt of Grimgor Ironhide, Saber Mountain. Saber Mountain, of course, does lead down towards the Falls of Doom, which one day could take you to Zarnagrand if you wish. But there are other routes, such as the Eagle Eyries, which lead to Gorger Rock. Y'all are very fond of that. And the Granite Spikes. You'll notice that many of these provinces are stacked horizontally. So you go Blizzard Peak, Ice Spewer, Saber Mountain, and then Eagle Eyries, Gorger Rock, Granite Spikes. And then you go Black Fang, Kadak Vrag, and the Titan's Notch. And then you go the Firemouth, Yeti Peak, Blood Peak.
Hunt down those lizard trinkets.
Then you have Kadak Azorn, the poor doomed dwarves who are holding out against the Vale of Titans and Amber Peak. Further south, you have the Valley of Horns, which leads into the Great Hall of Greasus and Kadak Krakaten. Over here, we have the Maw Gate, which of course leads to the Great Maw itself. And then further down, it's attached to Grim Top and Mount Thug. And then you have Scrap Towers, which pass by the infamous Flayed Rock and Nobby Gorge. But south of these, and just in this little nook that leads eventually into the Kingdoms of End, you have the Haunted Forest, ruled over by the one and only Helmengorst. Here, we head into the islands, where you have the Dragon Isles, where the Lizardmen mostly hold control, but of course Kugoth Plaguefather has taken up recent residence in Dragonfang Mount, which gives him lots of income to play with. And as we head across the currently impossible to enter lands, there are a few other notable places, most notably the beautiful elven colonies that can be found here. So you have the island with the Tower of the Sun, which can definitely be expanded to include more settlements in the future, which is also connected to the Tower of the Stars, and then Tor Elisor here further south. Is the Haunted Forest a magical forest? Yes, it is a wood elf settlement. Let's head down to the Southern Chaos Wastes. So the Southern Chaos Wastes are broken into 4 areas, 4 provinces, and each province is controlled by a different demon god, or chaos god. So first you have the Demonium Hills, which belong to the Levitious servants of Slaanesh, the Crucible of Delights, the Castle of Splendor, the Altar of Facades, and Occam's Forever Maze, a shadowy place, led of course by rapturous excess. Then we have the lands of Nurgle, the Abyssal Glacier, with the Skull Carver's Abode, Vololtrax, and the Lost Palace. Then we enter the crystalline lands of Zinch, where you have Fate Weaver's Crevasse, where he launched his assault against the Fortress of Dawn, next to Grotrelix's Lighthouse, the Demon's Gate, and of course the Sinhal Monolith.
100 010 Southern Chaos Waste. Where are my Chaos Penguins?
Come back in like 5 years. Then you have the Icefire Plains, ruled over by the Skull Reaping Servants of Khorne, at Mount Othul, the Never-Ending Chasm, and of course the Godless Crater, where a certain hero has taken up residence that we will be playing today, because I'll get to play as myself, the Oracle of the Sacred Plaques. Heading back a little ways, let's head up north into Lustria. So we have the Citadel of Dust that connects to the Dusk Peaks. And then, of course, you have Zlonzek, which leads up into the Skaven-controlled kayaks, controlled by the nefarious clan Skrat. You have a pass that leads up here into the Sentinel of Time, which leads to Subatun and Oxiel under the control of Lord Skrulk. Meanwhile, if we follow up the coastline, we see that there are Tomb Kings still residing in the jungles of Lustria, but these are the Deserters of Katep. The Deserters of Katep do control the Duskgate, the Copper Landing, and the Golden Colossus, maintaining controls over the dusty deserts of eastern Lustria. But they do, of course, connect up into the mountains, where the Mine of the Bearded Skull and thrice-cursed Peak hold out against the Skaven forces. Meanwhile, the Turtle Isles on the mainland are controlled by the Lizardmen, everyone's favorite, the Sentinels of Sheti, who control the Golden Ziggurat as well, but they unfortunately are faced by Rakarth, who resides within the Great Turtle Isle. And Rakarth is not alone, because as we head further north, we see that Rakarth still has allies with the Bloodhall Coven of the Dark Elves. Though they do now actually have a mainland settlement instead of purely being an island chain. So they're no longer just with this weirdly isolated Dark Elf faction. Beyond their ruins of the Wellsprings of Eternity, we reach the Creeping Jungle, where the Spectazuma lies empty, supposedly. But the Temple of Kara has taken up residence thanks to Marcus Wolfhard. Temple of Kara, fun fact, actually tying its origins back to the mysterious Amazons. And of course, you have the Monument of Idzatal here, controlled by the Skaven of Clan Mange. Further north, we begin to run into a lot of Savage Orcs controlling the High Sentinel and the Floating Pyramids. Beyond them is Pahux, the Monument of the Sun, the Monument of the Moon, Swamp Town, of course, and the Shrine of Sotek. Meanwhile, Hexwaddle is fighting a desperate battle against the Demons of Slaanesh, and this particular opponent is a very hard starting opponent for Mazdamundi, because it is an exalted Greater Demon of Slaanesh. Scipio, the Duchess of Carnality, is a surprisingly annoying opponent. Over here, you have Port Reaver, which is, of course, connected to Skeggy and the Ziggurat of Dawn, but you also notice there are ogres, my lord! You have the Sharktooth tribe, who have taken up residence around Port Reaver and can provide interesting mercenaries to all comers. Meanwhile, as we head back up into the lands of the Dark Elves and the ancient city of Quintex, if we follow along the coastline, we eventually reach the city of Arnheim. And as we follow along, we will come across, yes, of course, the Twisted Glade, where Solostra Deerfan now has an entire major settlement to herself and controls a very commanding position over Ulthawan while she fights for the Black Forest and Hotek's Column. Now we head into the sacred lands of Ulthawan, where you have the Dark Elves desperately holding out, or maybe allying with Nakari, the Arch Tempter, who's set up in the Shrine of Kurnos and is fighting to capture Elysia and Tor Akrer, places that hopefully he'll be able to take. Over here, you see Kothik is holding out in their 2 cities. As we head further south, we arrive in Tor Yvris, which is controlled by Altharion the Grim, who's fighting against the Skullcrag Greenskins, who've taken over Trelawnea and also control southern Yvris all to themselves, with Karnthel, Elisali, and the Shrine of Loek. Over here, you've got, of course, Lothern, which is holding out against these Dark Elf rebels that have made their way into the inner lands. You have the toned down but still beautiful Vortex, which I hope we actually get a landmark for at some point. The White Tower of Hoeth, which is dealing with a significant amount of Slaanesh corruption. I wonder if maybe there's some sort of issue going on behind those sacred walls. Up here by the Phoenix Gate, you can see the Gain Vale is still a lovely island on its own, though it of course has a way to get around, but it's a very nice defensible position. Here we have the Griffin Gate leading out into Tor Anrock, which as we head further south, you can see there are many opponents very nearby to Ulthawan, with Arnheim. Commissar Zer, thanks for the raid, great to see you, hun. And of course, Solostra Deerfawn is now a troublesome opponent for the High Elves as well. As we leave the shores of Ulthawan, we arrive in the Galleon's Graveyard, where Count Noctilus is, of course, lurking up here to be a torment to Calidor. Let's see, we still need to go to the Southlands, don't we, chat? Oh, no, we're actually not done with our Lustria tour. So if we head back to Lustria, we can see, so we have the Temple of Kara here, and if you head south from the Temple of Kara, you reach the Lizardman city of Tloxlan, which is now a major settlement, not a minor settlement. Over here, or Tloxlan, sorry. And then Zahatek is a minor settlement, and then there's the new Bretonnian settlement of Brion, where Albrecht de Bordelot has set up to get some delicious frog legs. Meanwhile, over here, you'll see that Lustria has become a much more dangerous place, chat. The Lizardmen are no longer alone, fighting against their ancient enemies, for the diseased city of Chakwa and the city of Quitax have become taken over by the Blood Keepers of Khorne. The nefarious demons have set up shop. Meanwhile, the Prince of Apostles is leading the Apostles of Change in the ancient fallen city of Hualodl. Further south, the Sacred Pools are holding out as best they can near the capital of Itza, but demons of Nurgle, the nasty pallid nurslings, have taken over the ruins of Sholol and the diseased remains of Quetzal for themselves. Over here, Slonhapek and Axolotl are still holding out with the Blood Swamps against the uncroaching Luther Harkin, the Arch Commodore of the Vampire Coast, who of course has a province of rebels to deal with. Further south, the Fuming Serpent and the Star Tower remain mysteriously quiet, though rumors have it that there's someone who's taken up residence there. The Altar of the Horned Rat and the Mark of the Old Ones, of course, belong to further Skaven incursions.
Down those lizard trinkets.
And the Sentinel of Time, and then over here, you'll notice the city of Chupudal has returned to the coast. It's no longer an island. It's just back on the coastline, which is actually kind of probably more accurate to how the city would modernly be represented, because for the most part, most of Chupudal long ago sunk beneath the waves. We got the Mangrove Coast connected to the Southern Sentinels, and that completes our tour of Lustria. So if we head across the ocean here, we arrive at the Star Tower, which has recently fallen to demonic invasion, and Cairo's Fate Weaver is fighting against the few survivors who are holding out at Dawn's Light.
Yes.
As we head up through the coastline, past Tor Serpendar, we start to run into Skaven problems at the Caverns of Sotek and the Temple Avenue of Gold, led by the clan Morbidus. And then there is Teclis at Sotek's Trail, because he knows that every good journey always starts with Sotek. North of Teklis is Krokgar, who's fighting against Clan Mordkin. Krokgar starts in control of the Golden Tower, which of course allows him to get a very, very nice starting settlement. And he has the nearby city of Teotihuacan that he needs to capture to establish a better base. Further north, you cross the Cursed Jungle, the Serpent Coast, and the Temple of Skulls, currently controlled by the Skaven, and you enter the Doomglade, where the city of Ryestra also lies, and Libris is fighting a desperate battle against the capital of Lamia, controlled by those sympathetic to a mysterious Silver Queen. South of that, you have the city of Marak, which is connected to Granite Massif, and of course Karag Orud, which is controlled primarily by the Greenskins. And as we head south through the mountains, you arrive at Mount Arachnos. Further south is the Lost Plateau, and then of course Thoric Ironbrow, and the recently reclaimed hold of Kadak Zorn. Where's High Queen Khalida? She's over here. North. But yes, Libris is now a port, as it should have been in the first place. As we head into the deserts proper, as we cross the river Mortis, we see that there are lots of things going on here. You, of course, have Wazoran leading the Necrarch Brotherhood, or at least a vampire who claims to be Wazoran. And amongst this desert, you have Setcher the Imperishable, who's busy having to reclaim the deserts from all of these annoying challengers. The Black Pyramid of Nagash sits mysteriously empty, though rumor has it there may be a threat lingering below. The Black Tower of Archon, Zandri, El Kalabad, and the Pools of Despair are contested over by the Bretonnians and the Tomb Kings. Meanwhile, further north, the Stragos Empire, led by a necromancer by the name of Caden, faces off against Rapunz de Leoness and her Bretonian allies, who of course share the mountains, the Atalan Mountains, with the dwarfs. Across, we still have the Land of Assassins, where the Wizard Caliph's palace leads into the Sorcerer's Islands, and Lashik. But let me show y'all something really cool. The new Uber province that looks very open to future expansion, the Great Desert of Araby. A single settlement province with a new landmark building that is controlled by a new ogre tribe, the Famished, and their leader, the Sand Grinder. What a mysterious desert. Who knows what could take place here in the future? Meanwhile, further south, we start reaching the jungles and we arrive in the penal colony of Sudenburg, which has gone through a recent religious transformation as Volkmar the Grim has taken up residence in his quest to seal the 9 books of Nagash. Over here, the settlement of Bagar, of course, leads to Antok and Kasabar, where Manfred von Karstein has taken up a similar quest, though for power rather than doing the world any favors. Orient's Camp still marks the true entrance to the jungle proper, where you reach the Sun Tree Glades, which are connected to the Forest Goblin tribe of the Leaf Cutters, who control Quixotal and Nahuatl. There we go. The statues of the gods lead up to Tlaqua, where Tic-Tac-Toe is finally returned to the jungles proper and is fighting off against the sly Tree Hugger near the Death Head Monoliths. As we head further south, we'll encounter the one of the few still true standing lizardmen cities in the Southlands of Zlatlan, which is connected to Uatek and then leads to Kairos. Heading up towards the Badlands, we see Skarbrand the Exiled has taken over Deaf Gorge, a very suitable place for him, if I do say so myself, which connects to Gorgazan and Agru Migdal, controlled by the Topknots. And as we soar north into the lands of the Border Princes and the Forest of Gloom, we see that Akendorf is connected to Kadak Ansgahar, and Matorka, while Carrick Hearn is still connected to Mingol Vondobarak. Fort Saul leads down into the lands of the Border Princes proper, where Zvorak, Verdanos, Myrmidons, and Argolis hold out against Skrag the Slaughterer, who's recently taken up residence. Down near the lands of Tilea, you have the Pirates of Sartosa, led by Arnessa, which lands into the newly expanded Tilea province, which has gained a new settlement of Riff Raffa. So Riff Raffa has been added. This is something personal of mine, but I'm hoping we can get this settlement pushed to the coast and become a new port, and that instead of being Riff Raffa, we can make it into the port city of Remus, because then we would have Warhammer Rome, which would be cool. But Merigliano connects here to Belagar Ironhammer's even more challenging new start position, because Belagar wasn't hard enough in the past. He's now even more difficult because he starts in Zadak Zil instead of Carrick Izor. No, chat, you've got to earn Carrick Izor away from the Broken Nose tribe. Up here in the southern Grey Mountains, you'll notice a new settlement has arrived, Gristle Valley, where a very important building to the Ogre Kingdoms is waiting for you, and also the new resource of tusks or ivory for all the factions of the Warhammer world to claim for their own. Beyond Karak Norn and Karak Asgraz, which now stands thankfully empty, and across from Helmgart lie the northern Grey Mountains, where Heinrich Kemmler attempts to defeat the dwarfs of Karak Zilfin, and of course capture Grungzent for himself across Fort Bergbens. Corone, attached to Lianguel, now has to deal with the expanding presence of the Red Duke and the Vampire Counts of Musion. Because not only do they control Lianguil, but they also control Musion. Lainess is desperately holding out, sandwiched between these two foes. Castle Artois, of course, still leads down to Gisero, and Castle Baston down to Montfort. However, you'll notice that Bordelot and Aquitaine, a new settlement, now belong to Armand d'Aquitaine, who are the new Bretonnian faction that have taken over in Albric's absence. Grom the Paunch is now always in Massive Oracle, not just when purely being played, so now you actually have to deal with him as a troublesome opponent. You, of course, have the Forest of Chalons, where Quenelles and Paravon are. Brion is dealing with the Red Cloud Greenskin tribe, who have moved very far from their traditional start position, where Carcassonne is defending itself. Athel Lauren looking beautiful as always, especially the Oak of Ages. Oh, look at all that magic. As we head south to Astalia, Astalia is a much more interesting place because Astalia is now 2 provinces, not 1. So you have the settlement of Bibale, which is connected to Montanes, up where Morgar the Shadow Gave is beginning his rampages. And Montanes leads down to Nuha. Or Nuja? Nuha? I guess, I mean, if you're pronouncing like Spanish, it would be Nuha, right? Which is a new spice settlement, which connects to Magritta and then up into Tabaro, where, of course, Skavenblight lies. Then, up here, we arrive at the lands of the Empire, where you have Nuln holding alongside Solend, up into Averheim, the Moot. There are beastmen roaming all over the place. And then you have the nefarious vampire counts. And Sylvania has actually been restructured. So Sylvania is no longer east and west. It's now north and south. So you can see that Eschen, Castle Drakenhof, and Schwarzhofen are now a settlement. And it's actually much easier to get from Drakenhof to Schwarzhofen with the river blocking being between Averheim and here. And then Waldenhof, Castle Tempelhof, and Fort Oberstyre are now northern Sylvania. So it is much, much easier to defend your holdings as Vlad von Karstein and, of course, his lovely wife, Isabella. North of the Vampire Counts, We have the lands of Ostermark, where the ruins of Mordheim lie, ruled over by Clan Creepus. Then, of course, you have the Griffin Wood, where Drycha resides, connecting us to the lands of Talabecland. And you'll notice there are ogres, my lord! The Treehammer tribe seems to have a bit of a grudge that they're trying to settle with Drycha, or maybe they're just really trying to supplement their diet with fiber. Up in Ostland, you have Castle von Rauken connecting us to Nordland and Wolfenburg. And past Wolfenburg, of course, lies Brass Keep. Much more chaosy and nefarious looking, and ruled over, of course, by Festus the Leech Lord. South of Festus is the potentially doomed province of Hockland, leading down into Talabecland, which of course leads down into Stirland. Connecting us over here to Reichland, which is still its glorious self, with Altdorf and Emperor Karl Franz. Marienburg is holding out desperately with Gorsel and Arnau. And of course, you have the Black Pit Forest Goblins, who control Wrecker's Point, as well as their very big fortress over here. Lorelorn Forest, dealing with Kazrak the One-Eye nearby. And Salzenmund holding out desperately. Of course, there's Boris, controlling his large province, potentially doomed against all of his new foes. So yes, welcome everyone to Immortal Empires.
Wretched foul lizard thing